Hi everyone, Dead Battery here, and thank you for joining me on my channel. So today's video is going to be another fun one. So you know how I like to collect Wonder Swans, and I may have a couple of them. Well, my husband has a slight problem with controllers. He buys all these really random, unique controllers, and eventually we are going to play the games that they're for. But I wanted to show you some of them because they are really neat looking, and some of them only have one purpose for a game, but they're still really cool to see. So let's have a look at how many controllers my husband has. This one here is called a Super Joy Card. It's made by Hudson. This one has the 4 main buttons, and each of the buttons does have turbo switches that are 3 levels. You have normal, medium, and high. And that's determining the power. This controller also has a special use for certain games, something about cheat codes, and the games that it's really good with are its Super Bomberman 2, 3, 4, and 5. So if you're a Super Bomberman fan, have a look and see if you can find this controller, because this one will definitely be your friend. So this is a Nintendo 64 controller, but it's made by Hori. It's called the Commander N64. This controller has some of the main buttons, but in the middle it does have turbo, and that is for games that you may have to push the button a lot. This one here is the Super Famicom Fighting Commander. It's made by Hori, but it's also its first generation of this. Sitting in the middle are all the buttons for turbo. A lot of these controllers have turbo on them just to make button smashing games a little more easier. This controller here is called the NES Max. The reason they made this one, it had some improvements upon the original NES controller. It does have textured grips. And then this is called a cycloid, which replaces the D-pad. And the A and B buttons are smaller. It also has a turbo A and B button that goes with the rapid pressing of a button. This is a Super Game Boy controller. It's made by Hori as well. This was made to actually look like an original Game Boy, down to the D-pad and the A and B buttons, as well as you can see here, it's even got the fake speaker. The neat thing about this controller is that it has the same setup as a Game Boy, but it does have these extra buttons here, L, Y, X, and R. The L says mute, the Y button says speed, the X button doesn't have anything special assigned to it, and the last one is the R button, and it's labeled as the window button, and it opens the Super Game Boy menu. This one is another Hori. It is made for the Nintendo GameCube, and the unique thing about this one is it is made to be used with the Game Boy extension that you can hook to the bottom of your GameCube, and it was mainly used for Game Boy games and Game Boy Advance games. So if you have the connection that goes on the bottom of your GameCube, I would look for this controller because this will be really awesome to use with your whole system. This one here is pretty unique. It looks like a normal controller, but if you look at it here, it says Sharp SF1. So this controller is made for the Sharp TV that played Super Famicom game. If you've never seen one, have a look at it. If you don't know what this is, I'll leave a link in the description below so you can look it up. So the TV was built with a Super Famicom attachment on it, so you just pop the games in the top of it, and then you have these controllers. Now, we don't own one of these Sharp TVs yet. I don't know if there's one in our future, but this controller is pretty cool, and I thought it'd be neat to show it. So this controller, I don't know too much about. This is one of the newer ones we got. It's called the Imagineer Pro Pad, and it's for the Super Famicom. From what I can read, it does say that it will play the games for you. I don't really know what all these buttons do, and it does have what appears to be a screen and an auto button. Until we get it hooked up, we will not know fully what it does. If you're a fan of fighting games, I do have a controller for you. So this one right here is the Capcom Pad Soldier, and it's for Super Famicom or Super NES. It depends on what region you're in. It's supposed to be easier for fighting games. I'm not a big fighting game fan. I am definitely a button smasher, but I'm excited to see what my husband does with it. He's definitely the fighter game person in this family. So the last two, you only need to hold them with one hand. So this is what they look like. The first one here is PlayStation. The second one is for Super Famicom. The PlayStation one has all the buttons on the front and the top and nothing on the bottom, where the Super Famicom has buttons on the top as well as buttons on the bottom. On the front side, it does have switches, and I'm not 100% sure what they're for, but I'm wondering if they're for turning the buttons on and off if you're not using them. But once again, both of these are made for RPGs because you're not doing as much moving around, so you really only need one hand to control these. As you can see, my husband has a lot of controllers, and a lot of them do need to be cleaned. Don't worry, I will definitely be working on that. Nothing's better than a nice squeaky clean controller. We haven't used them all yet, but eventually we will be going through our backlog of video games, so all these controllers will definitely come in handy. Maybe I'll become a fan of fighting games and I can beat my husband at something. I don't know, but a lot of these controllers are made for very specific purposes, so hopefully we'll be able to use them all. If you own any of these controllers, please let me know in the comments which ones you have and what games you like playing it with. And as always, if you like this video, please like and subscribe and share with your friends, and I'll see you again in 2 weeks. Bye!